Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations looking for those 1,000 best practices, technologies, services, and products as we move through the 21st century. And we're talking about the Zika virus, which is actually spreading like wildfire across Latin America, the Caribbean, and now even within the United States. And we have a theme called Bite Zika Back, kind of a cute little name. But the whole thing about it is this is a very serious matter because you had a virus that came out of Uganda and Central Africa, and all of a sudden it's morphed into something that actually is bringing great diseases and also death to hundreds and now possibly thousands of people as it morphs into a totally different virus than what it was in its own homeland. And so we're going to be talking about this, but from the standpoint of Puerto Rico, an area that's very beautiful, historical, and at the same time is facing great challenges as far as its economy, its society, but now the Zika virus. And the reason for looking at this is not only is that maybe a gateway coming from the Caribbean through Puerto Rico into the United States, but how is this going to impact both the mainland and Puerto Rico itself as we move forward over the months and years ahead as this new killer virus is really let loose on an entire hemisphere that really has no natural immunity to this virus. And I have someone sitting right beside me. This is Dr. Jose Colucci is here, and he's from the University of Puerto Rico, retired. Also has a chemistry background and many other things to add to his name. And Jose, it's always good to have you with us.
Thanks for inviting me.
And he's the real Puerto Rican expert. And so actually some of the interview will be both in English and in Spanish because we really want to reach into Puerto Rico, Jose, as we discussed, and be able to share this information with people that are just now waking up to the fact that something has been let loose on the island that is totally unexpected by the government and the citizens, and we're moving forward. But we're going to start off with some of the slides here. If we can bring up the first slide, because Jose was affiliated with the University of Puerto Rico, and this is something I think you said is a very old logo from the days of the Spanish that first came in to that area. But tell us a little bit about where Puerto Rico is located and some of the connections to the United States. And I'm just going to kind of go through some of these slides so people will be up with us.
Yes, Puerto Rico is located in the Caribbean Sea. And it's very interesting, the wording you use of the gateway, because it turns out that strategically when in the 1800s, when everything moved basically by sea, it is kind of like the gateway towards South America. So we are located, I think, around 1,000 to 1,200 miles from Miami, so we're very close to the mainland. And we grew up under Spanish, the Spanish country, so we speak Spanish, and then back in 1900 we became part of the United States as a territory. So that's where then the bilingual Spanish-English connection comes from.
Yeah, looking at this too, the Caribbean, I mean, you're really strategically located as far as the Caribbean is concerned. And as a good friend of mine who's the ambassador from the Bahamas always reminds me, is that they are the third country that's connected to the United States, but also that, you know, really Puerto Rico is almost a linchpin between this whole area, which includes the northern part of South America. So what impact do you see from all of these Spanish-speaking countries that are part of this area within the Caribbean basin?
Yes, this is it's kind of interesting on the history because after the Spanish-American War, which was when Puerto Rico became part of the United States, There's a lot of theories, obviously even conspiracy theories of why the United States wanted Puerto Rico. And apparently, a lot of the reasons was the strategic location towards South America. South America, as you know, is basically Spanish and then some Portuguese in Brazil. So that connection culturally was also very critical, not only the geographic connection, but also the cultural connection.
Yeah, and you can see the strategic location and all this. Tell us a little bit about Puerto Rico itself. Its landforms, the climate, some of these kinds of things, because this is really leading to the Zika virus and why it may be spreading so rapidly within the country itself.
Yes, Puerto Rico is 100 by 30 miles, so it's like 3,000 square miles. Like all those islands there, it has like a mountain range in the middle, and then you have the coastal areas. Interestingly enough, it's amazing what that microclimate is formed due to that mountain, because we have like 7 climatic regions.
That's incredible, such a small place.
Exactly, and what it does, like you mentioned, when you start doing the link toward the Zika virus, you have like an area where we are like a tropical forest, where you have incredible amount of water, like 100 to 150 inches per year. And then you have like an arid zone in the south, because then the water doesn't get there. So that's when you're dealing with situations like this, you would think like, well, you have to deal everything the same. But it turns out that the island has, a lot of differences along the whole island that you have to look at it from, from point to point.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. And these are, I want to keep these on full screen if we can, because these are absolutely some stunning photographs of Puerto Rico, and it'll give you an idea of just the diversity. Tell us what we're looking at here. And again, going back to the Zika virus and the mosquitoes, how this type of climatic zone or different climatic zones really relate to the spread of the virus throughout the island.
Yeah, you have one of it's a beautiful beach. I'm assuming that's probably in the East Coast. Anywhere that you have such a beach like that, normally you would have a population around it driven by tourism. In that particular area, it surely looks like it's a very nice green area, so you get a lot of rain. And then the question is, how is the control of having the accumulation of water with regard to some of these disease? One of the issues, and I think there have been some articles that we discussed before, that they mentioned, this is part of life. The fact that you're living in the Caribbean and that you're getting rain and all of that basically also leads to having to deal with diseases like the Zika virus, the dengue, and other diseases that are just typical of the area. And for good or bad, people just get used to it. And this is something that I guess we're going to be discussing later, like what this getting used to it means with regard to the sense of urgency that the people may have versus other people that are not in the area.
Right. And this whole thing, too, of this link between the Puerto Rico, Latin America, where it really came into Brazil and those areas first, and then getting a toehold, up the East Coast and across all the way to California in the United States. Just walk us through some of this, if you will, Jose.
Yeah, this one I'm assuming, because I see a runway, that's probably a small airport in San Juan, and I've been there because you have a marina, and what you have is like, anytime you have some geographic area like that, I guess commercially leads to the establishment of marinas and also some neighborhoods that goes around it. Those are probably, upper middle class, maybe. Because in order to have a boat like that, as you can see, those are really nice.
Well, the whole thing about it is, and what the real link is that you have the airport, you have the cruise lines, you have all these yachts, and these are all areas where the virus just hitchhikes through the mosquitoes, and they can really just go anywhere because there's just thousands of people moving daily between Puerto Rico and the mainland.
That's a really good point. In Puerto Rico, contrary to the mainland U.S., we're not that dissipated. So everything is kind of all together. So you may be going to a very nice tourist area and you're going to be affected by these viruses. I mean, this is a reality of life based on the conditions of the islands and the fact that it's a small island by itself.
Yeah, and looking at this, again, all these green areas, of course, this is another climatic zone that you have here with the high mountains and various types of forest areas, and of course these are perfect breeding grounds, because my understanding, Jose, is all you need really is the top of a bottle cap, that size, and you can have literally thousands of mosquito larvae in there, and they hatch, and then all of a sudden they're infesting a whole area. So you don't really need that much water.
No, I know. It's I grew up with that, and it's terrible because it's not just a matter of having a pot or something outside or a pond. Like you mentioned, I mean, anything that can accumulate a few drops of water can lead to the growth of these mosquitoes. And that's why it makes it so difficult for trying to control it just based on the fact of like, well, I don't have anything that collects water. Well, you do, because it rains and it will accumulate.
In anything. And one of the things that in the research for this, what I found most interesting, the number of cemeteries that you have throughout Puerto Rico. And I guess the tradition is that you have all these flower pots that are put at each tombstone. And just think, that could be millions of mosquitoes in just one of those. And so now they're trying to figure out, well, how do we control within the cemeteries? I mean, you just look at this. I mean, the magnifier of all of this, the amount of water that you have in Puerto Rico, and the widespread incidence of, you know, the types of mosquitoes that feed during the day, that bring, you know, the dengue, the chikungunya, and now, of course, the Zika viruses. It's amazing what the government and local communities and the citizens are actually faced with.
No, it's you're right. When we were discussing this before, and you start looking at traditions that who knew could be affecting this, there's a few things that happen. For example, like you mentioned, the cemetery. It's very appropriate. Puerto Rico, I mean, they're very close with regard to the cemeteries, and there's a lot of tradition associated with the death, where people basically, I mean, celebrate the life, but then also obviously they like to go to the cemetery, so they make it a place to go in there. And who knew that may affect you having all these nice flower pots. Mm-hmm. I mean, where water accumulation, right, will happen. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that.
And all of a sudden, millions of mosquitoes are multiplying throughout the area. And of course, this is, we're almost out of time, but this is what you're faced with, where you have the tourists that come in, so you're getting thousands of people moving back and forth the mainland, and then also within Latin America, because that's where many of the bites and all that came from, were for mosquitoes and those areas. So this is just incredible. Well, Jose, thank you for setting the stage for all this. We're going to be continuing this conversation as far as the Zika virus, our little theme that we have, Bite Zika Back, and the impact it's going to have. This is the second in the series. So thank you as we're going forward as we create the Emerald Planet.
There's more than just books at the library.
There's more than just books at the library.
Excuse me.
There's more than just books at the library.
Il y a plus que de livres à la bibliothèque.
Hello. You have a lot of great books here today. You know there's more than just books at the library.
I know.
There's more than just books at the library.
I don't want to be hooked to a machine.
I want all the medical treatment available to me.
I wouldn't want my family to have to make this decision.
My doctor knows what's best for me.
An advance directive is your life on your terms. Talk with your family. Decide what's right for you. Then put it in writing.
Documenting my wishes today means my family won't have to make heart-wrenching decisions later.
To learn more, visit www.putitinwriting.org.
1,200 American youth run away from their homes every day. The National Runaway Switchboard is here to help. 1-800-RUNAWAY. If you are a runaway, thinking about running away from home, or a parent or guardian concerned about issues facing your child, call us 24 hours a day. 1-800-RUNAWAY. In times of crisis, hope is just a phone call away. 1-800-RUNAWAY.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we look around the globe for those 1,000 best practices, technologies, services, products, and of course the leaders are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And we're having a second in a series on what's called Bite Zika Back. This is about the Zika virus that went from absolutely nowhere to spreading very rapidly across Latin America, the Caribbean, and now moving into the United States. And so we're looking not only at the reality of the Zika virus, which is actually here and having great negative impacts on the citizens where people have no natural immunity to it, and really a virus that virtually no one even knew about. My understanding from the research is there was about one main researcher that felt like this was something worthy of study, and people just kind of left him alone to do that over the last 20 plus years, and now all of a sudden it's arrived on our doorstep. And we have Dr. Jose Colucci Rios, who is a retired professor from the University of Puerto Rico. And we're really focusing on Puerto Rico and the impact of the Zika virus because the island is really beset with economic and social challenges, and at the same time you're just compounding that with a disease where they think as many as 4,000 pregnant women do have the Zika virus. And of course with the microcephaly, who knows how many of those children will be born with deformed heads and brains. And so and then they're talking about a number of other diseases, maybe even impact on the heart and other vital organs, as well as paralysis and other types of outcomes of this whole thing. So, Jose, this is really a challenge to everyone.
Yes, I know. And the problem, as you know, is that, with all the situations that are going on in Puerto Rico right now, this is an additional challenge that they have to deal with. And it's a problem that is very complicated. It's not there's not very easy solutions, as you know. I mean, you have been working with this mosquito disease for a while, and I imagine, you can provide a lot of input with regard to things that can be done on it, but it's a very stressful situation. I know the president, I read an article that now they're going to be assigning
President
some
Obama.
funds. President
Yes.
Obama will be assigning some funds specifically to Puerto Rico to be dealing with this crisis.
Yeah, I think about $254 million, which is a significant amount of money. But when you have a virus that people know very little about, and it just like it appeared, even though supposedly, and we're going to see in some of the maps, how the gestation of this going around the globe. But just looking at this arm with all these mosquitoes on it, and this is actually from Puerto Rico itself, this photograph. This is not a very appetizing, but also it just gives you an idea of what people are faced with. We have a video. This is something done by the Washington Post, Jose, okay. And we want to play this. This will set the stage for what we're really talking about.
The Zika virus is mainly transmitted through the bite of an infected mosquito. A mosquito bites an infected person, then passes along the virus. The Zika virus can also spread from an infected pregnant woman to her unborn baby. The virus can also spread through sexual contact with an infected person. Only about 1 in 5 people infected with Zika will get sick, and only for a few days. Those who get sick suffer from a mild illness. Fever, rash, muscle pain, or conjunctivitis are some of the symptoms. Symptoms show up between a couple of days to 1 week after the person is infected. Not everyone shows symptoms. Aedes aegypti is the species of mosquito that primarily carries the Zika virus. The mosquito has a painless bite, attacks in the daytime, and prefers humans to animals. In the US, the mosquito lives in the south. A person cannot die from contracting the Zika virus. However, the Zika virus has been linked to a recent surge in babies born with microcephaly, a very rare birth defect. The condition causes newborns to have smaller than normal heads and poor brain development. Some newborns with microcephaly have died. Scientists are also investigating a possible link between Guillain-Barré syndrome and Zika. This condition can cause long-term nerve damage or paralysis. In rare cases, people have died. Brazil is the epicenter of the Zika outbreak. Some scientists think Zika may have arrived during the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. One or more infected visitors attending matches could have started the chain reaction. Brazil has more than 1 million cases of the virus, more than 4,000 suspected cases of microcephaly, and more than 400 confirmed cases of this condition. Nearly 30 countries have cases of Zika virus transmission. More than 30 people in the U.S. mainland have been diagnosed with Zika after traveling to affected countries. Dallas confirmed the first Zika virus case in the U.S. acquired through sexual transmission. There is no cure or vaccine against Zika. Infected persons can only treat the symptoms. The CDC has advised pregnant women to reconsider travel to countries where Zika can be transmitted. The CDC also urges pregnant women to abstain from sex or to use protection if their partners travel to or live in areas where Zika is spreading.
Now we're looking at a scene actually from within Puerto Rico itself, and you're looking at this very forested area, lots of water and all that standing around. And this is really common, and they say even in the cities, yes, you have areas where there's a great amount of standing water and all that. So tell us a little bit about the conditions around the countryside in Puerto Rico.
Yes, Puerto Rico, like every other country, they have their metropolitan areas, which is obviously full of cement and concrete. But you're right, I mean, given the climate, even in the metro areas, you see a lot of trees and places where you can also get the conditions for the growth of the mosquitoes. Once you get out of the metro area, especially in the rural areas, that's when it gets even worse. And I think those are probably the high impact areas that there's a lot of concern about. And the thing about Puerto Rico also is that even those rural areas, they're highly populated based on typical numbers, for population. So don't underestimate the fact that you're talking about a rural area that probably won't be affected that much, because in general the population there is also very high. So you have a perfect condition with regard to you have the water, you have the water accumulation, and there's a lot of people also there. So the possibility of spreading is also very high.
Yeah, well, this photograph that we have here, this gives you an idea of some of the spraying situation as far as around in your capital city, and you can see you're going to have to go a long way to get rid of these mosquitoes when you have something that looks just like we have right here, particularly with the high rainfall that you have in most areas of the country. I know there's a rain shadow area you said in the south, but with the trees and the grass, the dew points as far as in the evenings and all that, I mean, these are all perfect breeding grounds for mosquitoes.
And also, I mean, as you know, I'm an engineer, and you see that picture there, and I think they're trying their best, but how effective is just a spray like that to be able to go into something that can grow, as we mentioned, even in a cap of a bottle, mm-hmm. bottle cap. So I think it's the right direction, but then I'm not sure whether when you have a situation like that where it can be growing anywhere, how effective you can be to basically eliminate it.
Well, I think this is really the telling point here, Jose, is the world's deadliest animals, and you see the mosquito is just, the proverbial 800-pound gorilla, in all this, much more than wars and internal strife and all these other things. And of course, then it goes down all the way to shark attacks. But you can see the mosquito is really the most deadliest animal on the planet. And they say somewhere in the world, every 30 seconds, a child dies of malaria. And now you compound this with the Zika and the other neglected tropical diseases like dengue, yellow fever, chikungunya, and all that. It's just incredible what people are faced with. But the Zika, I think, Jose, and we can talk about that together, but malaria, we've been talking about it for a long time, and it just keeps going on and on and on. But all of a sudden, what do you think has really galvanized the public as far as Zika?
Well, I think the microcephalia, microcephalia in Spanish.
Yes.
I think that was a wake-up call. I mean, one thing, for example, just to give you some background, I grew up with the dengue. And the dengue, in reality, like I mentioned before, is just a fact of life. You know, you deal with it and get over it. Now, when you're talking something like this, when you see those pictures that you show with regard to the brain size of these poor kids, and you know, parents and families dealing with that, I think that's going to be a really tough wake-up call for everybody to say, you know what, this is serious. And what is sad about it is that, you know, you were the one that showed me that graph before, and I had no idea that you got so much death based on mosquito. I know you're an expert in that area, not only for the Zika, but the other diseases there. But I don't think the population knows that mosquitoes actually have that kind of effect on populations.
I'll throw out one other interesting tidbit that come across the research. There's more people that die in 1 year of malaria and tropical diseases than in a whole decade as far as all the wars that we've been having in the last 30 years. So it gives you an idea of the scale and the impact as far as these tropical diseases are concerned. And then this gives you an idea of what we were talking about just a little earlier, Jose, as far as the spread. You see in Uganda, first identified 1947, and it was so minor, and people would get like a little cold or a flu or something like that, didn't think much about it. And then as it started to spread, as you can see in the 2000s, and of course ended up in Brazil, and now it's morphed into something that really is becoming a killer. And you have these babies, and in most cases they don't expect any of them to be able to survive with a microcephaly, although there are a few cases where people have, their children have been able to survive. But this gives you an idea of the Zika, and just looking at it as it spreads across the globe and the tropical areas and all that. So looking at Puerto Rico, how does it fit into the profile of these nations that we see here, both in the red and the almost an orangish view here?
I think Puerto Rico is what I call the first world, third world country. So we got the combination of both. So when you see those countries, we just fit in with all of it.
I think we're running out of time, so it looks like we're done. Thank you for being with us as we set the stage for the Zika virus. Bite Zika back. Thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
Some dreams are universal, dreams that inspire us. Multiple sclerosis is a devastating disease that changes lives forever. The National MS Society does more for people with MS than any organization in the world. But we can't do it alone. To get involved, visit us online at nationalmssociety.org. or call 1-800-FIGHT-MS. This is why we're here. Because nobody dreams of having multiple sclerosis.
What's wrong with this picture? Half of young Americans can't locate economic powers like Japan and India. 20% can't even find the Pacific Ocean. Without geography, our children aren't ready for the world. Geography is everywhere. It's incredible creatures, rhythm, fashion, flavor. It's economics and politics. It's change. Understanding connections between people and places is critical in the 21st century. That's why we created mywonderfulworld.org. Go there now for your free parent and teacher action kits and give our kids the power of global knowledge. Because kids who understand our world today can succeed in it tomorrow.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. and we're looking across Latin America, the Caribbean, and the United States, looking at the disease called Zika, a virus spread by day-feeding mosquitoes, 2 different varieties, and these are living in areas that are very conducive to being urbanized, because these mosquitoes have adapted themselves to urban areas. And I have Dr. Jose Colucci Rios, who's sitting right beside me. He is a professor of the University of Puerto Rico and is going to be talking with us about Puerto Rico, because that's really our focus right here, Jose. Thank you for coming out and being with us. And we're looking at a virus that's literally almost came out of nowhere. It really only came into the Western Hemisphere through the Pacific over in the 2000 era. And now it's just spreading like wildfire across Latin America and the Caribbean and, of course, the southern United States. So what are some of the conditions in Puerto Rico itself? And we bring up this map so we can see where that's located. That really is conducive to fostering these mosquitoes, and how that really is a launching pad for what is now becoming, could be, a very deadly virus.
Yeah, I mean, where do we start? The first thing is climate. I mean, we are in the Caribbean where the rainfall is very high, so you have a lot of possibility of having rainfall accumulation. The other one is cultural. The whole component of cultural with regard to, like we have discussed before with the cemeteries, that, they have all these pots for plants. I mean, people like plants a lot. So when you have a plant, if you don't do it properly, you're going to be accumulating water, and that's like, people know is thousands of mosquitoes that can be grown in there. And the last one, also related to cultural, is that, and there's several articles that you and I have discussed before, is the fact of getting adapted to just accepting the fact that you're going to be dealing with that. The difference, when you compare it, for example, to the dengue, is that the dengue, from what we know, I guess, is not as lethal as the Zika virus, or the effects are not as bad. So when you have that kind of situation where people are getting used to it, what actions will they be taking against the Zika? It will take some time to face the reality of what the Zika virus can do.
Yeah, looking at this map here, you can see how Puerto Rico just really falls in between there in the Caribbean area, between, the giant country of Brazil and the other countries in that whole Latin American area. And of course you have Mexico, and then coming up to the United States. But this is really what we're talking about. And I tell you, this looks like a lethal animal. As we know, the mosquito is the most deadly animal on the planet. And when you look at this, you can see why people would fear this, and you can see how that really just strikes fear in the hearts. And of course, this goes to the whole thing, and I'm just going to talk through this, Jose, is how this actually lands on the skin. It starts biting, digesting the blood from the system, and then it goes to the next person and bites them, and then of course it leaves the blood that it collected before, and then it just continues this infection. But the unique thing, as I understand it from the Zika virus, is that you have someone that gets bit, another mosquito who does not have the Zika virus can come and bite that human, tap into the blood, and then all of a sudden it has the Zika virus, which in turn it can infect. And that leads to this, sexually transmission, which they've never known that before as far as a tropical disease. And then also now you have to start testing the blood, all the blood donations. So this is something that's just really just beyond what people can actually believe. But then you look at this, this poor child with microcephaly. I mean, this is something that just really breaks your heart. How culturally can the Puerto Ricans face something like this?
One thing about Puerto Rico, and we have gone through, some of these issues before, for example, the H1N1 virus. And at that time, it was questioned whether or not Puerto Rico can survive something like that. And I know Puerto Rico, people are very resilient. It's something that I know a little bit about resilience from my research that I've done before. And resilience is something that you create when somehow you don't believe the infrastructures of your government can help you solve all your problems. Mm-hmm. So in Puerto Rico in general, the population are very aware that, you know what, you have to protect yourself. So I think what will happen, and thanks to the internet and people know who the CDC is, a lot of people will be looking into what can I do to be sure that I don't get affected. And a lot of the population there have access to that information. So that's kind of like the good news. Mm-hmm. So it's a very educated society. So I think a lot of people will be finding out, this is for real. I mean, this is not just another disease that you have to deal with. I mean, this is a very deadly disease. Mm-hmm. So the good news is that being a very resilient society that can deal with this situation, I think people will adjust. Hopefully, they'll do it at the beginning of the curve. That's my hope.
Well, we have a video that we want to play right now. I wanted to get up and I wanted to leave this image up so people could see this. And so this is called Zika in Puerto Rico, and let's look at this. And this is provided through the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation.
So the challenge is that we expect that the virus will be transmitted here. We expect a large number of cases presenting. We have tested nearly 1,000 samples between January and February of this year. We have detected 118 positive cases on the island.
One worst case scenario would be if that link between Zika and microcephaly keeps strengthening, and it's proven it's having hundreds of microcephaly babies being born to pregnant women because we weren't able to protect our pregnant women population.
There is a huge amount of travel between Puerto Rico and the U.S. To places like Florida. It's expected that there will be some local transmission, but in the U.S., the housing conditions are more protective against mosquito bites with air conditioning and screens. I think we're all concerned. We already have cases who have traveled to the Caribbean or other parts of the world coming back, pregnant women who've already been infected in the U.S.
Something that's absolutely incredible, Jose, and this is out of your home area, Puerto Rico. And so you look at the outcomes as far as the misshaped heads and the brains and all that, the short life expectancy of these children. And I've talked to women who have actually looked at some of these slides and these photographs, not directly affected, they're here in the United States, but they say, oh, it's so sad. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the things, even in the interviews being done by international media, is that the people in Puerto Rico and Brazil and places like that have reported it's just something that's very, very sad that they really can't protect their citizens and protect the women there. But this gives you an idea of the actual where the mosquito is in the United States and where this could actually spread. So you're looking at most of the South, over into California, and then all the way up through New York City and maybe even into Boston. So, with the climate change, this is one of the factors about this that we really haven't talked about, Jose. But climate change is a direct impact of allowing this mosquito to go into areas that maybe 20, 30, 50 years ago, they wouldn't even be able to survive.
Yes, that's true. I mean, when you look at that map, you start worrying very quickly, and the climate change definitely is one area of concern when we see those incredible temperatures fluctuating in places that never used to. And then the other factor, which is ironic, is the internationalization of the world, where now suddenly you have people coming from everywhere available to go to any places like this. And not knowing or assuming that those areas are safe because they're touristic places increases a level of basically of people feeling safe to be able to go to these places and not fearing anything. So I think, and we have talked about this before, education is key, not only for the local population, but for everybody in general that travel.
Yeah, and this is the whole thing. They say now anywhere on the planet, one, because of climate change, but also with the ease of transportation with all the air, and of course that's growing at exponential rates, is that you look at now at this map. So we just go back to the one where we had this area, and when you put it into the blue color, you see how this really is spreading. And these are the major population centers. So if you look at this, you probably have maybe 60, 70+% of the population of the United States now is all of a sudden exposed to the Zika virus, for which people do not have any natural immunity.
Yes, and also remember that people, when it's winter, in the northern states, what do they like to do? They like to go out to tropical, warm places. And in those warm places is where you're going to have the highest concentration of contamination with these viruses. So, it's a serious problem that I think is not only a problem of the local people from those areas. It's for everybody has to be involved and very educated on the subject.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some of the very practical solutions. But you look here of going into the Caribbean area, and the whole thing of you add Zika to this, the chikungunya and the dengue and all these others. So it's something that really is an issue. And of course the common denominator, one, you see the airplane, people being able to travel very easily and quickly, and of course the mosquito that you have and all of this. So, this is something, just looking at this, you see this, of course, the one here, the hand, is a study. It's being done, one of the solutions with the SkinTex MR3 that we'll be talking about. But the CDC, WHO, you can see here on this right photograph, the massive research, all of a sudden it's gone in. It's almost like Ebola. When Ebola hit, it spread into the United States, one case, and all of a sudden became a worldwide phenomena. And now with the Zika, this is something that's going on right now. Just a word or two, because we're about out of time. What do you think for the people of Puerto Rico? What should they know and think about? And we've got about 30 seconds. Got to be quick.
Well, I think get educated. Deal with the reality that this is something that is very serious. And I think the government have to put a lot of emphasis in the reality of this situation.
Yeah, the whole thing about this is you really, as you were saying, you really do need to be aware that this is something that's morphing into something beyond anyone's comprehension we even thought about 2 years ago. Thank you for being with us as we talk about Fight Zika Back, as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
This is firstgov.gov, where we're obsessed with getting you government information.
Brand new student loan applications on the site, baby. This calls for a celebration. Where's your uncle?
So in the end, it was either take the astronaut gig or come work here. What can I say? Duty called.
Dude, that's my cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure that's Sam's cop.
Oh, sorry?
Yeah. No. Sam's? No.
Just log on or email us and get what you need.
C, change of address form. That's how it's done. D, driver's license renewal.
E, emailing Social Security information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice, we'll allow it. All right, Ed. What are those?
Government surplus cars for auction.
You posted those online last time.
No, you did.
I'm posting them online this time.
For all your government information, firstgov.gov.
Oh, what have we got here? Sometimes you feel tired. You can't seem to lose those extra pounds off your midsection. And your joints hurt when you take the stairs. Well, you're getting older. But I'm happy to say that there's some simple things we can do to keep you happy and healthy for years to come. We can also lower your risk for some serious diseases the older population is often subject to. Proper nutrition is more important than ever. Your body has changed, you know. Not as many treats. A basic exercise plan, lots of walks and fresh air, and most importantly, come and see me for twice-yearly checkups to help ensure the best possible quality of life. Now, how does that sound? Good boy.
Improve the quality of life for your elderly pet. Schedule twice yearly checkups that include preventive care and regular lab work. A message from the veterinary members of the American Animal Hospital Association.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock of Emerald Planet TV in Washington, D.C. We come to you on a week-to-week basis, bringing you the best of the best. And sometimes we're talking about things that are directly affecting the population and then how to be able to solve this through various types of best practices, some very simple and others very complex. Sitting right beside me is Dr. Jose Colucci Rios, who is the professor and actually administrator at the University of Puerto Rico, retired here in Washington, D.C., still very much tied back to Puerto Rico, which is his homeland. And Jose, we're talking about the Zika virus, and we're going to now move to some practical solutions that we have. But we have a video that we want to show you, so we really expand this information that we're sharing here. This is credited to the British Broadcasting Corporation, BBC. So let's go ahead and have the video, and then we'll very rapidly go through some of these practical solutions.
Excellent.
Welcome to the nerve center of the US's fight against Zika. This is the blood-sucking insect that's causing the international public health emergency. And up here is a map of all the states that are affected. These are all imported cases that have come in from other Zika-hit countries. As you can see, 13 cases in Texas, 28 in Florida, and Puerto Rico is causing the biggest problem. Those numbers have just been updated, and there have been more than 100 Zika cases there. Experts have been called in from all around the country and all around the world to work in this control room, and I've been speaking to some of them.
These are very devious insects. They, adult female, she hunts by hanging low to the ground and sneaking up on you and biting your ankles. Her bite is very benign, so you won't feel it right away. So she'll be able to take a sip of blood and move on to the next person before you even begin to itch.
So a number of the insecticides that have been used for a long time are no longer working as well. That must be a real concern.
Yes, it is. We've been using the same two classes of mosquito adulticides for decades, and because we have not had additional tools to rotate in, we're seeing insecticide resistance in places that have used the same product over and over and over again, literally for decades. So,
and why is that such a worry now?
It's a worry now because if the mosquitoes are resistant to what we're using to try and kill them, it's not killing them. So, for example, if you have treated 100 mosquitoes and that product is only going to kill 2 of them, then you haven't controlled the mosquitoes.
There's mounting evidence that there's a link between microcephaly and other birth outcomes and Zika. There's an emerging pattern of evidence that the two are related. We're not at a point where we're saying Zika causes birth defects, including microcephaly, but every day we're getting more information and more evidence that points in that direction. If other mosquito-borne illnesses are any indication, then we would expect more disease in the southern states, southern part of the United States and several other areas and territories. But the concern is that if it does cause birth defects, then we're obviously concerned. We haven't seen another infectious disease cause major birth defects since rubella more than 50 years ago.
Gives you an idea of what we're really facing, Jose, and of course going back to your motherland, Puerto Rico, they're facing this. And we're going to go through some of these slides because we have many of these very simple solutions, and I want to go over this. But this is the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, actually in Puerto Rico. And we were just talking during the video that actually some of these people and are on the media as far as Puerto Rico is concerned. This is some of the testing that was done for this Intex MR3. Actually, the testing was done in Germany, but there is a practical solution there. But it gives you an idea of just how extensive, as far as the mosquito is concerned, where it is, the concern that it has, Jose, and you know that. And this is the face of a young mother who actually is infected with the Zika virus and is pregnant. And so she's wondering, you know, what is my government doing for me? What can the public health system in Puerto Rico be able to do to help as we move forward? And these are some scenes within the CDC. But tell us a little bit about the government's response that you've seen to mosquitoes in the past, dealing with the chikungunya and dengue. And of course, I guess you do have maybe some yellow fever within Puerto Rico itself.
Yeah, Puerto Rico has, you know, the local CDC and the health department. And then situations like this, I know from Atlanta, they come in to help.
Yeah, which is the headquarters of the CDC.
Of the CDC is in Atlanta. They have done it in the past. To tell you the truth, who takes the lead? I think in general they leave it to the local administrators to handle the situations.
This would be the local government in
Puerto Rico, because normally this is the people you deal with. In my experience before, which was as an administrator of the university, where we had the H1N1, the way it was handled was that they told the university administration, well, you have to be aware of all the actions that you should take, and left it to these institutions to handle it. And I think in general, you know, the government is limited in resources, so what they do is they try to go out and do through the radio. They use the radio a lot. I mean, radio is a way where people listen a lot in Puerto Rico. It's a way of communicating quite effectively. And they do that. I'm not sure how much they go to communities because of the lack of personnel. I mean, that's something.
And so funding is a real key figure in all this.
It's a real key. I mean, whether or not you can go in person versus just using the media to do it. Some of these areas, as you know, I mean, you have to go there. I mean, this is not areas that are very knowledgeable of these things, and this is why it's so worrisome, because it turns out that those particular areas also happens to be breeding ground for these kinds of propagation.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to this. This is actually within the CDC and the research center they have there in Puerto Rico. And the whole thing, Jose, is just how do you translate all this research, and hopefully some kind of development for this gets translated into some of these very practical methods. And of course, the one we're looking here is just simple window screens. And my understanding that very few homes in Puerto Rico have window screens for the windows.
Yes, in the middle class and upper middle class definitely uses the screens. Not everybody has them. I mean, there's an additional cost, and as you're aware, the population in Puerto Rico, there's a lot of people that live under the poverty limit. So in reality, you know, when you have to pick versus, you know, eating versus having a screen, I think the decision is very clear. So you have to deal with that social situation, and that's why intervention of the government for solutions like this that can help you minimize. I mean, I don't think it can eradicate, but at least minimize, should be very aggressive.
Yeah, and this whole thing is, I've been in over 60 developing countries myself, and very few countries do you see screens like this. Even in your middle class, many times you do not find that. And of course, spraying is one of the things, and we heard in the video that this is really not very effective anymore. And if you look at the exhaust that's coming out of the back of this pickup, it dissipates very quickly.
Yes. Screening also, remember, there's not only the cost of the actual pesticide, but having all these pickup trucks and paying people to do it costs a lot of money. And then when you have in a country like Puerto Rico that is catch-starved, where do you put your priorities? Because right now, I mean, they have other crises going on. So I guess the federal government probably will need to establish that, hey, this is something that not only will be affecting the island, but this is going to be worldwide, especially in the U.S.
Well, the thing that was just amazing to me, they're talking about by the end of this calendar year, there could be 200 million Americans in the mainland, 200 million That's an incredible number when you're starting at a few hundred that they're talking about now that came back, and now morphing to 200 million by the end of this year could be affected through this because of the spread of the mosquitoes with the Zika virus. And of course, one of the things they're saying to pregnant women is don't go places where you actually have the Zika virus. And just think about the economy of Puerto Rico if people stop going there for tourism. And that's going to have a huge impact.
No, definitely. I mean, and they don't need it. I mean, they're going through a lot of situations right now, dealing with the budget crisis and other social issues. And now suddenly you're going to get into a situation where people don't want to go there.
Yeah, that's a disaster waiting. And even people that have family there are going to say, I think we'll stay back in the United States. And this is one of those practical solutions where the government is saying, okay, let's get all the used tires up. Let's get the water out of them because that's breeding ground for, not millions, but billions of mosquitoes and their larvae, and start processing these. So this is, the screens, the spraying, the picking up the tires. This is one of the areas, and of course you're looking at the WHO, World Health Organization, the United States EPA, and this leads to one of the solutions that we found, which is the Pucra Chemicals have developed the Skintex MR3, and this is something that they've spent about 25 million US in about 15 years to develop this particular material. It's a non-woven material that has the microencapsulated permethrin, which is really the only thing that can be worn and used to kill the mosquitoes, and not just to try to keep them away from you, but to actually what they call knock dead and knock down. And this gives you an idea of the microencapsulation and the entanglement, the microentanglement of the fibers through this, which is really beyond the horizon. That's why we talk about it. This is something that's immediately available, Jose, for Puerto Rico, for any place around the world. And these are just some of the studies as far as the washability. German government made them go out to 100 washes to say this is going to kill, and the various sizes and types and style of this, which can be made into clothing as well as into the blankets or the chamas that we're seeing here, versus the bed nets, which are not very effective. So in the few seconds we have left, what do you say to the people of Puerto Rico?
Well, I think that they should basically get educated with those solutions that you propose there. I think it's something to look into seriously.
Yeah. And this whole thing about it, Jose, is that we really need to educate people. We need to make awareness. Thank you for always being here. It's always good to see you, Jose. And thank you for sharing. And thank you, dear viewers, for being with us as we look around the globe, as we work together to create the Emerald Planet.